welcome everyone to our first virtual event in a series of educational sessions that we're doing during the months of January and February. My name is Amy Vanderploeg. I am the Director of Sales for Porter Hills Village and Cook Valley Estates. And as I said, today's virtual event here is the first in a series of 4 different educational events that we're doing this month and next month. So we are happy to have you with us today. If you have not already signed up for the next virtual events, we would encourage you to do that. We have a couple of mailers that have gone out. I know you can't really see these clearly, but the one for January this month has today's event, and then on January 27 is the second virtual event for the month of January, and it features our CEO of Brio Living Services, which is our parent organization. His name is Steve Fedico, and he is going to be speaking with James Kelly, who is the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer and also my boss. So Steve and James are going to be talking about the financial aspects of our organization as a whole, the financials of our Porter Hills Village community in particular. So it's going to be a very interesting presentation. It is virtual, just like this one. So there's room for tons of people. So I encourage you to sign up for that one. And then you will be getting the February invitation in the mail in the coming days. And there are 2 more virtual events. I will be doing one on February 10th, covering the levels of care that we offer at Porter Hills Village and going in depth on that, those higher levels of care. So I would encourage you to join that one. And then on February 25, we have a virtual event featuring Liz McCulloch, who is the owner of Seniors Moving Smarter. Many of you may be familiar with her or that company. She's going to be talking about downsizing, getting ready to make a move. So that will be very interesting as well. So that's just a little bit about what's coming up. So let me go to the next slide, and this is kind of a housekeeping thing here. If I can find there we go. Okay, so you are all muted right now. We have the power behind the scenes to turn off your microphones, and we're going to keep it that way throughout the presentation. Your video also does not need to be on. You don't need to be seen on camera, no problem there. But I imagine that as I'm talking, you're going to have some questions. So you will see it's either at the top of your screen or the bottom of your screen. There's a place where you can put in a question, and those will be read. Brooke, who's working behind the scenes here, will read those questions to me at the end of the presentation. I will have time to answer those, but you can type them in there anytime you want. Okay, that's enough housekeeping. Let's get started. So today's topic is retirement options, and there are a lot of them. In the greater Grand Rapids area, we are blessed to have a lot of different options. And so I'm going to kind of break down those different options and talk through what that means. Hopefully that will be helpful for you as you kind of decipher what's going to be the best thing for you as a next step. So today is not focusing on specific information about Porter Hills Village or the Flats, which is our new project that is just now under construction. Many of you have come to an event about the Flats and have learned about that in a little more detail. Today is a little bit of a step back from that, talking more about, all the various options that are out there. But before I get into specifics of options, I really want to talk about what we call the longevity preparedness gap. This is something that I think many of us in the senior living business or the senior services industry, if you will, are thinking more and more about because we're seeing this gap all the time. So what do I mean by that when I say longevity preparedness gap? Well, historically, I think when we talk about, our retirement years, the focus is always on on a person's financial stability. Do you have enough money? Are you going to run out of money? That is always the focus. And certainly if you're working with a financial planner, that's what you're talking about. And you're planning in terms of, your assets lasting through all of retirement. And so what I say here is, yes, that is essential, but having money is not enough. We need to also have the infrastructure that's needed to support healthy aging. So I want to just talk about what do I mean by that when I say the infrastructure needed for healthy aging? Because these are things that all of you want to be thinking about, whether you decide to move to, one of our communities or another community, or not, that you're going to stay home as long as you can. These are things that you should be thinking about. So with your financial planners, or if you do all of that on your own, you're thinking about that in terms of money, but there's a lot more that goes along with that. So the first is thinking about building support systems. So what do we mean by that? That means having people and things in place, or at least that you have that plan in place for what that support is going to look like if and when you need it. So again, when we are talking to many of you about potentially moving to our community, oftentimes you're saying things like, well, I'm not going to move until I need to. And then sometimes we push back on you and we say, well, what does that mean when you need to move? What are some things that, would have to be true in your life for you to say that, well, now I need to move? And those are the kinds of things that then, if you identify what some of those things are, which a common one is, well, when I can't drive anymore. Well, what is the plan for when that time comes that you can't drive anymore? Have you thought through that? That is what I mean when I say building support systems. And then cultivating social connections. So this is something that if you come to tour with us at Porter Hills Village, or you have an appointment with us, or even if you come to, one of my presentations, I'm always talking about the importance of the social aspect of aging and how important that is. And of course, living in communities such as Porter Hills Village, that social connection is kind of built in. It's hardwired in, if you will. But if you're thinking that your plan is to age at home, then how are you going to continue to get that social connection throughout your aging years and the rest of your life? Because that can become a hardship as we age. Because in many cases, you have to go out and seek that social connection. Whereas when you live in communities such as Porter Hills Village, that socialization is right outside your door. The next thing I suggest here is adaptive housing solutions. So what does that mean? Well, things like, do you have grab bars in your bathrooms? Do you have a walk-in shower as opposed to stepping into a tub? Those are things that, in our own homes, we can make those changes as time goes on. Those things are all a part of community living. Our apartments are all handicap accessible, and there are very thoughtful design elements in our communities to help make aging in place possible, because the structure itself is set up to allow for that. And those are things that can be a challenge at home. If your primary bedroom is up on the second floor, requiring, a flight of stairs to get up there, and if, by the way, that's also where, your only full bathroom is, and then if your laundry is down in the basement, those are things that as we age are going to get tougher and harder to handle. So what's your plan for that? Again, moving to a community, those things have all been thought through and are all available for you right here. And then we have here arranging care contingencies. So my guess is that some of you on this meeting today are maybe already providing some level of care support to a spouse. And what happens when the caregiver gets sick or there's a problem? What's your backup plan? What's your plan B when something happens to you if you are the caregiver? So these are things that, when we talk about that longevity, people are living longer. And so that means we need to be prepared for that. So on my next slide here, I talk about that, anticipating, preparing, and being realistic. So anticipating the needs before they become critical. One of the things that is very interesting in our offices here at Porter Hills Village, the sales team, we are all together in our offices, and our phones are very busy. And many of the calls that we get are rather frantic calls. And those calls typically come from an adult child. Usually it's the adult daughter. And the call goes something like this. The daughter is calling from the hospital because mom had a fall. She had hip replacement. She is going to be going to Mary Free Bed for rehab. And then the doctor is saying she really should not be home alone anymore. You need to find a place for her to go. Those are very typical of the kinds of calls that we get here. Sometimes they're even more crisis driven than that. Sometimes we get the call and they say, my mom's being released from rehab tomorrow. Do you have a place for her? And we work very hard to meet those needs when we get those calls. But we also preach all the time, anticipating these needs before they get to that level. Because when it gets to be that critical level, it's typically not you who is making those calls, coming to tour, or making the decision about what happens next. That gets taken out of your hands when you're in a crisis mode. And so if there's anything that I can leave you with today, it's to think about that scenario well ahead of time and say, okay, I want to prepare. I want to know what my concrete solutions are, whether that is that we decide we're going to move to a community like Porter Hills Village, or, we're going to stay home, but we're going to anticipate that we need to make some changes to our house to make that doable. Whatever it is, prepare. And then be realistic. Be ready for those unforeseen challenges, because they do happen and they will happen. And it's always surprising. Well, we just came through the holidays. So I'll give you a couple examples of what happened over the holidays. We got a lot of calls like on Christmas Eve afternoon or New Year's Eve afternoon with frantic adult kids who were home for the holidays and saw the state of things with their parents. And then they call us to say, we need to do something in the next day or two. And I often think to myself, now, did that situation just pop up overnight? Probably not. This is something that's ongoing, but it wasn't being addressed. And so be realistic about what things might and probably will come up in the future, and make some decisions ahead of time. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox on that. So as we move into talking about the different options, let me first just paint the picture of the difference between for-profit communities and not-for-profit communities. In the greater Grand Rapids area, there are a plethora of both of these options. So a for-profit community means just that. They are in business to make money. And who they are making money for are the shareholders or the owners of the community, whatever it is. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's very important that you know the difference. If you're going to visit different communities, I would think it would be very important to know, is this a for-profit community or a not-for-profit community? Because the way a community is run can be very, very different, whether it's a for-profit or a not-for-profit. In the not-for-profit arena, which is what Porter Hills Village is, it is what Brio Living Services, our entire organization, is a not-for-profit organization. It's called a 501c3. So the first thing about Brio Living Services and then Porter Hills Village is that we are a faith-based, mission-driven organization. Now, right there, that's a big difference from a for-profit company. We are governed by a board of directors that oversees everything that we do. And so we are not in the business of making owners or shareholders more money. That's not why we do what we do. So we're not beholden to shareholders, which is oftentimes decisions in a for-profit company are made based on whether that's going to make the amount of profit for the shareholders that they want. That's not the way decisions are made in a not-for-profit organization, and ours included. It's about, are we doing the right thing based on our mission, which is to serve seniors across the state of Michigan with the grace and the respect that they deserve to the best of our ability. Also, as a not-for-profit, we are overseen by the state of Michigan. And that might sound like, well, that's no big deal, but it's a huge deal. The state oversees everything that we do. And so they are approving our contracts, meaning we can't just put any old thing in our contracts that we want. The state dictates what goes in our contracts. When it comes to any increases that we have with our monthly service fees, as an example, we need to go to the state before we do those increases to share with them our financial information to show why we need to have an increase. That is vastly different than how increases are handled in a for-profit organization or company. They can raise their rates as much as they want, and there's no oversight of that. The other aspect of being seen by the state is that all of our care areas, so our higher levels of care, our assisted living, our memory care, our skilled nursing, they are all licensed through the state of Michigan, meaning subject to surveys and inspections, and we have to meet the criteria that the state sets out. That's another big difference if you are looking at assisted living and you're looking at a for-profit down the street. Chances are they are not licensed, because in Michigan, assisted living is kind of a wide open category. Anybody can hang out a sign and say, well, we're assisted living, and not have any oversight whatsoever. And that's a little bit frightening when you're talking about providing care for folks as they get older. So that's a bit about for-profit versus not-for-profit. So now let's talk about, well, what are the options that are out there? Well, of course, when we think about residential living, the very first thing is, I mean, your own home or your condo, where you live right now. That is option number one, right? But there's no services that are included with that. If you want services, so if you want somebody to do your grass or shovel your snow or clean out your gutters or clean your house, you need to find those people and hire them and pay them. So that's option number one. Also in that category would be like a multi-family rental apartment complex. So if you just say, you know, I don't want to deal with this house anymore, so we're going to downsize and we're going to just move into this apartment building. That's an option, but typically, like I said, it's a multi-family. There's going to be, you know, families with kids. There's going to be, you know, 20 somethings in this building. It's just a conglomerate of everybody. And again, there's really no services included. So the next set of options are residential living, but with services. And in this category, there's several different things. So some of you may have heard of like a 55 plus, sometimes it's called an active adult community. So now it's, you know, you're in community, it's age segregated. You have to be, you know, usually at least 55 years old to live there. Typically, maintenance would be included in a setting like that. There may be some dining options. Usually there's not. And then there may be some socialization or activities. There might be a clubhouse or something like that. But typically it's not organized, you know, it'd be up to the residents to kind of say, hey, we want to get together and do this. But this is an option, kind of an active adult community. This would always be a for-profit option. Okay, the next set of residential living with services would be a standalone community. So this would be, you know, a community that is senior housing, if you will. They you know, might call it a senior living community. They may have some care. Oftentimes they don't have any care on that campus that is part of it. But there would be some services along with that. And then the final main option, and this is where we'll spend more time, is in a CCRC, a continuing care retirement community, also known as a life plan community. So this is what Porter Hills Village is, Cook Valley Estates is. So Brio Living Services, we have several continuing care retirement communities. So what does that mean? Well, first and foremost, it means that we have independent living. And within that, we have lots of options. We have apartments, we have townhomes, we have estate homes, you know, various different sizes and prices and all of that. So independent living. But it also, this type of community also has that continuing care piece, those higher levels of care. Assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, which is now more and more being referred to as long-term care. So this has everything. And it is the reason that the life plan community term is a good one is because when you make the decision to move to this type of community, you're planning for the rest of your life, however long that is, and at whatever turn that might take in terms of your health. You know that you're covered when you move into this type of community. So now within this, there are lots of different contract options, I will call them. How you pay for this can vary greatly. So let's go through some of this. Okay, so first of all, we have a type A contract. This is a life care contract. So this would be a not-for-profit, full continuing care retirement communities, which means there's an upfront entrance fee, sometimes called a buy-in. There are monthly service fees because this is an all-inclusive environment. In a life care community, the long-term care And here, I mean, from assisted living, memory care, all the way through to skilled nursing, is on site, and it's also included. So with a life care contract, you are prepaying for all of your care. You're doing that up front, regardless of whether you ever use that care or not. That's what this type of contract is. So as you can see, my bullet point, it's the most expensive option out there. So it works similarly to a long-term care insurance policy, meaning everything's covered. There are very few true life care communities in the state of Michigan. They are very popular out east and out west, but in Michigan, we do not have very many of them at all. So I would not be surprised if, most of you on this meeting have not come across that. The next contract type is a type B. So this is sometimes referred to as a modified life care contract. This is what we are. Porter Hills Village, Cook Valley Estates, we are a type B contract. So what does that mean? Well, we have that entrance fee. We have a wide range of entrance fees, depending on, what campus you're looking at, what type of dwelling, apartment, townhome, estate home, size of the apartment, all that stuff comes into play with the entrance fee. We have monthly service fees because it's an all-inclusive lifestyle when you move to our community. And then those care pieces, that long-term care is on site, the assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, and some of it is included. So it's not as nearly as extensive in terms of the life care contract. And this is why it's called a modified contract, sometimes a hybrid, because there are some discounts that our residents have at the skilled nursing level, but otherwise in the assisted living and memory care, it acts more like a fee for service. You pay the going rate if and when you need that level of care. Which brings me to the third type of contracts, type C, which is a straight fee for service. So these are not always a continuing care community. So a fee for service would be like a standalone community, typically a rental, but then if you want additional services like housekeeping or whatever, you would pay a fee for that. That's what fee for service means. And so this model could be in the for-profit world as well as the not-for-profit. Typically, there would still be some type of entrance fee and you'd have your monthly service fee. There might be some care on site. If there is, though, it's fee for service. You would pay for that care if and when you needed it. And then the type B contract, type D, excuse me, is a straight rental. So rarely would this be a full continuing care community. And mostly this would be in the for-profit world. So you don't have any kind of entrance fee. You're just paying the straight rent. These buildings, I wouldn't even necessarily call it a community per se, because it's just a rental option. So the common spaces, where activities could potentially take place typically are small. And usually there's no care included with this model. Perhaps there could be assisted living on a campus like this, but never skilled nursing. So those are the four contract types. As I said, we are a type B, which is kind of a hybrid model, a modified life care contract. So now I've kind of given you the background of what the options are, what the contract types are. So now you might be saying, well, what are we supposed to do with all of this? And kind of on this slide, this is pretty much what we see on a pretty regular basis. So we talk to people all the time that say, you know what, my plan is I'm just going to stay home. I'm happy here and I am never going to need any services or any help whatsoever. Now, I sort of call that burying your head in the sand. That is definitely not preparing for longevity and having a plan in place. This is just, I hope that everything works out. So I'm just going to stay in my house here and, everything's going to be fine. So that's one camp. Then we have folks that say, well, I'm going to stay home, but I will anticipate that I will need help at some point. But for now, I'm going to stay here and I will bring help in if and when I need it. Now, that always sounds like the best option, right? I'm sure lots of you listening today are thinking this very thing. Yeah, we'll consider Porter Hills Village, when the time comes, when we need the help. But the problem with this is we don't ever know when that's going to be, right? And so that goes back to kind of those crisis phone calls that I was talking about that usually come from the adult daughter and usually are in a moment of panic because they don't know what to do. So just saying, well, I'm going to stay home, and if the time comes that I need help, I'm just going to pick up the phone and I will find it. Again, that sounds really good, but it is much more difficult than you might think. When you are in that scenario where, okay, you've stayed home and now something has happened and now you do need help, you're going to have to make some changes. So typically you're not in the best frame of mind to be doing this research. Hopefully you have someone in your life who can do this research for you. But then it is really difficult to find what you need. So lots of people think, well, the solution is just, I'll bring home care in when I start to need help. And that sounds like something that would be so simple. But I'm here to tell you that it is not in the least simple, because first of all, there are lots of home care agencies in the Grand Rapids area. You have no idea unless you've gotten, a specific referral or reference from someone that you trust if that company is any good. And that's just the beginning of the issues. There are lots of problems with making sure that caregivers show up when they're supposed to show up and do what they're supposed to do. And it's very expensive. So what sounds like a really easy thing, the reality of that is not easy at all. And again, we see these things because oftentimes we get the phone calls after a family has tried to go that route. Well, we brought care in, for mom and dad, and it just didn't go well. People didn't show up. And then, the daughter says, I had to take time off from work because, somebody had to go over. It's a lot to handle. Okay, number 3, I love this. Cohabitate. Hey, I'll just move in with my kids or they'll move in with me if and when I need help. Now, I hope that most of you on this call are laughing at this suggestion, but you would be surprised how many people tell us that, yeah, I'm just going to move in with my daughter and her family and life is going to be peachy. And sometimes they actually go through with that plan, and 6 months, a year later, again, we get those phone calls and they say, well, it wasn't all it was cracked up to be because, between the hours of 8 and 6 p.m., I was home alone because everybody was gone to work and school. And, then they come home and it's chaos. And it just usually is not as lovely as it might sound. Okay, number 4 is I'm just going to make a change when it's a need-based decision. Again, I've already talked a lot about crisis and we want to avoid that. Number 5, as you can imagine, is what I think the best option is, and that is I'm going to make a change now when I can fully plan for my future. I want to make the decision. I want to make the move when I am able to do it, and it's on my terms. At the end here, in just a little bit, I'm going to talk about the flats, but many of you have been to a presentation about the flats, which is the next expansion or the next build of independent living apartments that we are doing on the Porter Hills Village campus. We just got through getting everybody moved into our brand new Ravines building, and some of you are familiar with that. So new independent living that opened in the summer of last year. And it was kind of the same process as what we're going to go through with the flats now, which is that folks had, you know, a year, 2 years to plan for that move into that brand new apartment. I'll tell you, that is a wonderful, wonderful way to go when, you know, when you learn about the flats, our new apartments that will be ready at the end of 2027, you know, that gives you all this year and next year to kind of wrap your head around the idea of moving, do the downsizing that is necessary. Everybody has to go through that. It's just a very nice way to make a move to a community if that's what you're going to do. So just a little bit of plug there for the flats. So why do people decide to move? Well, these pictures kind of show it all. This is the stuff that we hear when we're talking to folks. We always ask them, you know, why are you looking at this now? And in the winter, it's, you know, it's always, I just don't want to deal with the snow anymore. And even if you're hiring someone to, you know, plow your driveway and shovel your sidewalks, again, you're still managing that and lining that up, and they don't show up when you want them to, and you got to go somewhere and all that kind of stuff. The second picture is stairs down to a basement. Okay, so that oftentimes is something that people say. They're just sick of the maintenance, you know, plumbing issues, whatever it might be, lawn work. Those are all reasons why people start to think about making a change. I would like to encourage you to consider everything. So what is your budget? Of course, that's a big question, and a big part of what my team does, our sales counselors, is, you know, we talk with you about the various options available. What are the entrance fees? But we also talk with you about, you know, what does your financial picture look like? Because everyone's is different. I would say the vast majority of residents moving to our community are selling their primary residence and using the proceeds of that sale to pay the entrance fee. And so, you know, looking at what is comfortable for you. I'm sure that within the range of entrance fees that we have, we can find something that is affordable for you. Then looking at your lifestyle, you know, and the things that you enjoy doing, or maybe there are things that you used to do and now you don't have the time to do them because of all of the chores that you have to do, or your abilities have changed, or your interests have changed. And just, you know, what would it mean if you were living in a community where there were lots of options for you to dabble in many different things? Thinking about location, you know, what's important for you in terms of where you live when you're, you know, thinking about making a move. And then rational versus emotional decision making. This is an interesting one because, you know, a lot of times I think we know in our heads what we should do or what we should be looking into, but our heart says, you know, I don't want to do that. I don't want to leave my home. There's so many memories here. So how do you kind of square that, you know? I had a resident at a community that I used to work at, and he said to me, you know, I knew it was a very, very hard decision for him and his wife to make the decision to move to the community. He was an architect. He had designed their home and built it. And he said to me, you know, my head told me that this was the right thing for us to do, but my heart just, it was so hard, you know. But in the end, I mean, he went with his head because he knew it was the smart decision. And after the fact, after the move, he came to me and said, you know, it was the best decision that they had made and best gift that they could have given to their kids also. And then thinking about, you know, your care needs, maybe needs that you don't have right now, but in the future, what might those be? And again, going back to just preparing and thinking about, you know, what is my plan if something happens to me or to my spouse or whatever the case might be. So lots to consider. So now I want to just talk a little bit about the flats. And as I said, many of you have been to the presentation where we went really in depth with this. But what you see on the screen is the campus map of Porter Hills Village on East Fulton Street. And so all of the white buildings are existing. That's what's on the campus right now. And in the kind of greenish blue color, that is the new construction. So the left-hand wing of that bluish color are the flats. Those are independent living apartments, one bedroom with a den, 2-bedroom apartments. There's a total of 57 of them. And as I said, those will be opening at the end of 2027. The other spokes off from that building, or wings, if you will, are brand new assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing rooms. So if any of you have been into our main building, the oldest section of our building is now over 50 years old. We need to build new. So we are very excited that we will have these brand new care areas, and they're in very close proximity, and as you can see, connected to the flats apartments. So this is going to be a perfect scenario for, say, a couple. If one spouse is in need of that higher level of care, it'll be really close to the independent living, to the other spouse. So that's a wonderful part of this new build. And then also part of this new building is going to be a lot of additional common spaces. So another restaurant and cafe and library and hair salon and theater, all additional brand new spaces for residents to participate in all kinds of great activities. So again, this is under construction right now. For any of you who have been on the campus or have just driven past, it's very visible. You can see that there's a lot going on, which is also important to note. So I know there are other communities, big communities in Grand Rapids, who have plans also to expand. They haven't started construction yet. We have. And a big reason for that is because our organization was able to secure the construction loan up front from the bank, which is a really big deal, that our financial status, if you will, is so strong that the bank was willing to loan us the construction, to set up the construction loan right up front. So we did not have to wait to pre-sell a certain number or percentage of these apartments. We were able to secure those monies up front and start construction. And so where we are now is we are building a flats priority list. So this is a list of people who have said, you know, this is very interesting to me. It's 2 years down the road, which is really great for planning purposes. There's no commitment. At this point, people are making $1,000 refundable deposit to join the priority list. And that is going to give those on that list the first opportunity to pick their specific apartment, the location of that apartment, which floor plan they want. They'll be able to choose, you know, if they want a garage or a carport, to put their name in for that, lock in the pre-construction pricing. We have the pricing set right now, and it's in $2027. And so during this kind of pre-sell period, that's the lowest price that these apartments will ever be. Folks on this priority list will also have the ability to customize their apartment, to do upgrades if they want, but even just, make selections in terms of their flooring and their paint color and their countertop and cabinets, all of that, because it hasn't been built yet. And so there's a lot of really great reasons to be on this priority list. Again, it's not a commitment. I think it'll be probably this summer, early this summer, when we start going to the list of people to let them actually pick their apartment. And that will require a higher deposit at that time. But right now, this is just a great way to kind of throw your hat in the ring, and continue to learn about the flats. So as I said at the beginning of the presentation, today's virtual event is one of 4 that we're doing in January and February. We continue to do events every single month. And as we go into spring, they'll all be in person again. We just, for the winter months, wanted to do them virtually. So I encourage you to reach out to us, and I'm going to flip the slide here. This is a team of sales counselors that work with those who are looking to move into independent living. Many of you have already talked to these guys, so you recognize their faces and their names. But we encourage you to come and learn more about the flats. If the flats isn't the right option for you, we've got lots of other options, which, by the way, all are on waiting lists. So that's another thing, that's part of your preparation and your planning. Is if you think that eventually you do want to move into our community, you do need to get on a waiting list. So, okay, it's 10 to 2. So what we're going to do now is, if you haven't already, you can type your questions in to the chat section, and Brooke is going to read them out to me. So,
Hi, Amy.
yeah.
So, thank you everybody for attending. I'm Brooke, the one who's speaking out behind the scenes. So, unfortunately, we did have a small technical difficulty with today's event, and our chat portion did not populate, but we still want to get to everybody's questions. So, what I would ask you to do, if you have a question, please stay muted. If you can see on your screen, there's an icon of a hand that says raise hand. If you have a question, can you please just click that? I'll say your name, I'll unmute you, you can ask your question, then we can answer it. I just want to avoid people talking over each other so we can make sure we can answer your question. So apologies for the difficulty. We will have that resolved for the next event.
Okay,
So,
so I
do you
did.
have a question? Feel free to hit the raise hand now. All right, so Carol had a question. So Carol, go ahead. Oh, drop down.
I'm not familiar with the campus, so I'm looking at your diagram of the campus, and to the left of the flats, I see white buildings, little white buildings.
Yeah,
Tell me what
excellent.
those
Good
are.
question. Those are townhomes. So they are actually duplexed, meaning there's 2 per little white square that you see. They're connected at the garage wall.
Uh-huh.
Those are lovely 2-story townhomes, 3-bedroom, 3 full bath. So that's one of the options on the Porter Hills Village campus. And we do have a very nice waiting list for those. The next,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. The Ravines building is just follows that. That's the big white building around the curve by the townhomes. And that's the independent living apartments that opened this past summer.
Okay.
So good question.
I'll
Who
have
else
to
has
come
a
visit.
question?
All right, so we have Pamela D. If you have a question, if you want to unmute and ask that. Looks like maybe they changed their mind. Just to let you guys know, we will be making follow-up phone calls as well. So if you have a more detailed question you need an answer to, we can always help you then if you don't want to ask
Oh,
one now.
I'm here, sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, how many units are there in the flats and how many floors?
There are 3 floors and 57 apartments, and it's a combination of one bedroom with den, and 2-bedroom apartments.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you. This sounds really, really good.
yeah, excellent.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have Stephen Port, if you want to ask your question.
It's dedicated 2 bedrooms and it's all here.
Do you have a question, Stephen?
Oh, okay, I was muted, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You mentioned restaurant,
Yes,
and I wondered, a new one coming, is there also a restaurant in the existing part?
there is. Yes, indeed. So we have our restaurant called the Fairway Grill, which is in the area of our what we call our garden apartments, Gardens East and Gardens West. The Fairway Grill is a lovely restaurant that overlooks the Cascade Country Club golf course. That is our property butts up against that. So we know as we build the flats and bring in those residents that we will need to have more dining options. So that's why in the flats building, we have another restaurant planned there and another cafe. We also have a cafe in the area of the garden apartments. And so once all these dining options are open, residents will be able to dine wherever they want. They don't have to stay, in the building that they live in. They will be able to dine anywhere, and there'll be plenty of options. Good question.
Thank you.
Yes. Other questions? Anybody else?
Looks like Carl had a question. Carl, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
I'm wondering about the timing of when we started talking, it was early in the year that they would be available. Now, Amy, I think you said at the end of the year.
Yeah, the projection for the flats apartments is the fall of 2027. And that is still the projected time frame of opening the apartments.
Okay, we had been working with the month of March, but now it's just the end of in fall.
Yeah, I don't remember a March timeline being given. This is a huge project and it's definitely going to take all of this year and 3/4 of the year into 2027.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. I should just say, today's presentation, again, was not specifically about the flats, but for those of you who haven't been to a flats presentation, I want you to know we do have all the information. We have all the floor plans. We know what the amenities will be. We know what the cost is for the various apartments. So we have all of that. Today's presentation was just not about that. But if you are interested in the flats and you haven't, gotten a whole packet about it, either make an appointment with us and come, we can share all of that. We've got many more renderings and so forth besides just this map that you see on the screen today. So we can go over all that with you.
Looks like Rich has a question if you'd like to ask that, Rich.
Thank you. If a party or couple has long-term insurance in place that would provide for them various kinds of care that one or more might need over time,
Yeah.
Is there a way, how would that apply in the instance of what you have here? Is there a way to enter into the facility of residence on some basis that
Yeah,
would,
you come up with the financial,
Yeah.
it's not clear.
Yeah, absolutely. So long-term care insurance comes into play at the higher levels of care. So if you move into independent living, of course, your long-term care insurance does not cover that. But if you
Right.
need assisted living or memory care or skilled nursing, your policy very likely, pays some amount of that. And so if you have any of you that have long-term care insurance, I would encourage you to find your policy and read it. We meet with a lot of people who have long-term care and they have no idea what their policy covers. And then sometimes they are surprised. So you want to look for, what does it cover and how much does it cover? So typically it's going to give you a per diem, a per day dollar amount for, say, assisted living that it's going to cover. And then it also usually has some kind of cap, lifetime cap. So, but absolutely, in our higher levels of care, if you have long-term care insurance, absolutely that can be used. Good question.
thank you.
Yes.
Then Pamela D, did you have a question for us?
Sure did. Two questions.
This is Andy Dedemeyer.
Okay.
No, it's not.
Yes, it
Hey,
is.
two questions. Number one, the second presentation on Zoom, the 27th, is that going to cover the same thing as this session?
No. That's our CEO, Steve Fedico. He is going to talk about the financial health of our overall organization. He's also going to talk about how, moving to a continuing care community like Porter Hills Village is a good, smart financial decision. He is a finance guy. That's his background. So no, it will not be at all like today's presentation. I think you will find very good information, and any of you who, and I know, we get questions about the financial health of our organization. It's important for you to know that we are financially sound, right? And so he's the man. So I think that's going to be a really good one. I would encourage you to sign up.
But it'll be heavily finance based. I mean, the nitty
Yes.
the range of charges and stuff like that.
He's not going to talk about specific entrance fees. If
Okay.
that's what your question is, then that you want to reach out to your sales counselor, or if you've met with us before, we have all that information. And when I do the presentations that are specifically about the flats, I go over all of those costs. No, he's going to be talking about finances at a higher level, the financial stability of our organization, because we get a lot of questions about that. Like nobody wants to move to a community and then have them go bankrupt, right? And so he's going to really talk about that.
Yeah. Hey, thanks.
Yeah.
Another quickie. After you make the $1,000 deposit, how long is that good for? How long does that hold?
Yeah, so if you're on the priority list for the flats, that $1,000 deposit stays there as long as you want it to, until, one of two things. Either when we call you up and say, hey, you can now come and pick your apartment, then that $1,000 goes toward the next deposit, which is an additional $9,000. So a total of $10,000 to reserve your apartment. Or it's refundable. If you say, you know what, we changed our mind, we're not doing this flats thing, I want my $1,000 back. That's how that works.
But how about I don't want to sign up this time around. How about stay on the same list for the next round, next opening?
Well, that's not how it works when we're building a new building.
Oh, it strictly applies to the new building, not for the other.
Well, so the other lists that we have are called waiting lists. So, you know, everything else that we have is full. So if you said, well, I'm interested in a garden apartment, I don't want to live in that flats building. Fantastic. Then you go on a waiting list for a garden apartment, you put your $1,000 down, same kind of deal. And then you can stay on that as long as you want until, you know, you either take an apartment or say, you know, we're not going to do this.
Hey,
So
great.
waiting lists work a little bit differently than a priority list for a new building.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're a couple minutes over. We can take one more question. Looks like Rich has another question for us. Rich, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Oh, am I unmuted now? I think.
Yeah.
You are. Sorry, it won't let
Okay.
me unmute you. You have to do it yourself.
Again, the question about coming in with a long-term insurance policy in place,
Yeah.
how does that have a bearing on the entrance fee or the buy-in provisions? Is that,
It has no bearing whatsoever.
oh, okay,
Okay, because that's at the independent living level. Because assisted living does not have an entrance fee, nothing like that. You pay whatever the rate is for the level of care that you need. And that's when your long-term care insurance policy would kick in.
okay.
Make
Thank you.
sense? Okay.
I think, so, yeah. There's still an entrance fee then, is what I'm saying. There'd still be a buy-in requirement.
For independent
independent-
living, yes, all of our independent living has that upfront entrance fee and a percentage of that, a portion of that is refundable to you when you leave that dwelling. But
Okay.
that's getting into a whole nother
Yeah.
presentation, so,
I know, okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you all so much for joining us today. Again, sign up for the next ones coming up. Let me just quickly flip to this one more screen here. These are the folks that you want to talk to, but we really appreciate you being with us today, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.